Okay, here we go. Hey, Charlotte.
Hey.
What did John Voight, Bill Murray, Victor French, Ralph Waite, Mike Connors, Chad Everett, and Jim Morrison have in common?
They were great actors.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Charlotte Stewart.
Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Okay, you know her as Miss Beadle from Little House on the Prairie, and I know her as the hardest working woman in showbiz. Please welcome Charlotte Stewart. Woohoo! Okay, so before we get into all of these different things, the first thing anyone must do is first finish this podcast, listen to this podcast, and then the very next thing is go on Amazon and buy Charlotte's book. It's the most amazing book you will ever listen to or read. It is called Little House in the Hollywood Hills, A Bad Girl's Guide to Becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and Me. It is insanely good. And I know I seem to say that because I really loved Almanzo's book. I really loved Dean's book. But this is way, way better. There's a lot of stuff that she goes into, which will just, very little bit of it will be in this podcast. But she goes into great detail, and I really want to let you guys know that you got to read this book. It's one of the best biographies or self-biographies. What do they call that? Is that a different word? Autobiography. It's one of the best autobiographies ever. And I had the great pleasure of knowing this woman, and still I learned so much about it. Now, commercial out of the way. Hey, Charlotte, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm good. Alive and well here in Napa, California.
Exactly. So here's the deal. We obviously worked on Little House on the Prairie together, although we'll get into it because I don't know how much we worked together. But we were on at the same time for a very short period of time. But we've been hanging out at these conventions that we've been doing, and I've gotten to know you, and you are literally one of my favorite people, and you are the hardest working woman there. You never sit down. You just stand the whole time.
I'm used to working shows with my husband, who does meteorites at gem and mineral shows. And if you sit down, people walk right by you. So we stand there and say, have you ever held a meteorite? And, we have a great time.
Act 1, beginnings. So let's go to your secret origin. How did you find acting? How did you get into it?
Oh my God. It was a mistake. I had no idea about, I had no desire to become an actor. I was in Yuba City, California, graduating from high school, and all my friends were going to college and UCLA and and my grades were so bad I couldn't get into college, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I saw an advertisement on the back of Teen magazine. Remember, I was 17. And it was for the Pasadena Playhouse, which was the State Theater of California. And I sent away for an application. I filled it out. I signed my mother's name. I got accepted. And then I told my mom. She said, what? And we drove to Pasadena, and she was knocked out. It was so impressive. It's a 7-story building. It's a State Theater of California. It has 4 theaters in the school. I had to live in a dormitory for the first year. So all of that to a parent is, perfect. So
well, not only yourself, but a lot of famous actors have come out of the Pasadena Playhouse,
Dustin
not to mention a lot of
Hoffman.
the famous productions. Who was there with
John
you?
Voight,
Wow.
Dustin Hoffman. Yeah, a lot of people.
So that says how you got into school, but what was it that made you think that you wanted to be an actress about acting? What was it that turned you on about acting?
I don't think I was very good at the Pasadena Playhouse. But a lady came there interviewing women for the Miss California pageant. They wanted girls from small towns in California because they had LA and they had all the big cities. But I was from Yuba City, small farm town. So I got into the California beauty pageant because I was from a little town. And a talent scout was there and got me an interview for the Loretta Young show. That was my first
wow.
time. And it was a lead. It was a big part.
And didn't you win Yuba City? I mean, aren't you a champion in the beauty business?
No, they just named me Miss Yuba City because it was a small town and they needed girls from small towns. So.
Now, we just came back from this big, huge thing up in Northern California where we shot Little House up in Sonora and Jamestown. How close was that to where you grew up?
Very close. Very, very close. Same territory, except Yuba City was farm town. My dad was a rancher. He grew peaches. He had 320 acres of peaches, prunes, and as we called it, almonds. Almonds.
Almonds. Well, Dean's also from up in that area, so a lot of us, a lot of little folks on the prairie are coming from Northern California.
Yeah.
Now I want to go over some of this because it's kind of mind blowing. Okay, you have over 77 credits on IMDb, meaning individual credits. That's not counting all the episodes you did on Little House or all the other shows. It's just more than 77 credits, separate ones. And here they go. So this is some of the shows you've done. The Loretta Young Show, as you mentioned. Bachelor Father, My Three Sons, which we'll come back to later.
Okay.
12 O'Clock High, The Danny Thomas Hour, Hawaii Five-0, The Virginian, The Young Lawyers, The Interns, Bonanza, Mannix, The Waltons, The FBI, Cannon, McMillan and Wife, Medical Center, and Barnaby Jones are just some of the jobs that you did. And most of those were all before Little House.
Yeah.
So you're at the Pasadena Playhouse, obviously, which is here close to Los Angeles. Lots of great connections. You come into Hollywood and you just start knocking out these parts. What was that like when you're a young actor coming into Hollywood, kind of in its heyday for TV? What was your experience?
It was thrilling. It was so exciting. I got a little tiny apartment in Burbank, right by Warner Brothers, and I started getting shows right away. And I'll tell you why. Because I looked very young. I could pass for 15, 16 years old. And
well, that hasn't changed, honey. You still look very young.
well, they wanted actors who were over 21 just legally so they could work
Right.
for longer hours. And I don't know what the other reasons were, but that's why I got so many parts because I could still look very young.
So when you were getting these roles, you were playing teenagers and stuff like usually back then, a lot of these Westerns, girl in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Type of thing. Or were you playing the bad girl? Did you ever play a bad girl?
Only once on Hawaii Five-0. I played a drug addict. But
And was that, did you get to go to Hawaii?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's so cool. That was a big deal then.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. James MacArthur. Yeah.
So you're doing all of these shows, and one of the things because I was a young actor as well, obviously. I'm an idiot. Of course, you worked with me. When you're a kid, what I love about the studios, and you were older than I was at this point, but what I loved about the studios is they kind of were like a fort. They're built like a fortified city where there's walls all the way around it. And once you're through the gate, you feel like you're in this magical world where almost anything can happen. And seriously, when we were shooting at Little House, we'd see Klingons and cowboys walk by our trailers, or they'd be shooting Grease, or it's like, and Warner's was famous for like gangsters and cowboys, and they had that great backlot. Right. What was your experience when you were dealing with all of these kind of magical? Did you like that studio feel, or was it just sort of like didn't matter to you?
No, I loved it. Especially MGM. MGM was just incredible. If you go to lunch, when you're working in MGM, you go into the commissary there, and it's not like a cafeteria. It's like star-studded You know, it was because they're doing big films and TV shows, and I would just, hold my breath and go in and think, oh my God, who am I going to see today? I mean, it was so.
Now,
exciting.
when we ended up working at MGM for Little House, MGM became smaller and smaller. MGM was huge and sprawling. Did you ever get to work on the back lot before they tore that down?
No, not for Little House. I was off the show before you moved to MGM. But I did work at MGM, and I'm trying to think of what it was I did there because I can't remember.
That doesn't matter. But you did work with a guy named Gene Kelly. Now, I hear he was a young kid with a dream, and he directed you in this movie with Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart.
I got to tell you a Gene Kelly story.
Yeah.
He invited, we were working on the Goldwyn lot. It wasn't MGM, it was at the Goldwyn lot in Hollywood, which is a very small studio. And Nickadill's wasn't Nickadill's, it was another lunch place around the corner. But he asked me if I wanted to go to lunch. And it wasn't just, the two of us, it was a couple other people.
It was probably the Formosa right across the street. Yeah, it's still there. It's a landmark. It's a landmark now.
Exactly. We go out of the gate for the studio and we're on Formosa, and he starts skipping along the street and I start skipping with him. So I'm dancing with Gene Kelly up Formosa all the way to the restaurant. And it was a silly little step that anybody can do. But in my heart, I was going, I'm dancing with Gene Kelly.
Absolutely. Oh my God. And he's your director, right? At this point, not only, And so what was this project you were working on? It was, was it, God, I had it here.
I don't remember.
Right, but he was directing you, and you got to work with Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda, and it was just this huge, big movie. And of course, one of the great things about
that's right. It was a feature film. I had a very, very tiny part in it, but I got.
There are no small parts. There's only going to lunch with Gene Kelly and dancing. Let me just pull this up. I want to pull this up because I had you here. Oh, man, this is great. You have had the most amazing career, Charlotte. There's so many credits. And
I was lucky. I was lucky. And I got to say, I was a pretty good actress. I played kind of the same character in most of the things they hired me for. Until, like I said, Hawaii Five-0, where I was a drug addict.
Right.
And they, it was real different for me.
The movie that we're talking about, that directed by Gene Kelly and Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart, was the Cheyenne Social Club.
Yeah.
That was in the early 70s. And again, just like a legendary cast, when you walk onto a set with these type of people,
Stewart,
what's that like?
I was so impressed. But I have to tell you something that's very sweet. Jimmy Stewart had his own small trailer that was pulled onto the stage. That he could sit in. He didn't have to leave the stage where we were shooting, and he would sit on the steps of his trailer and play the accordion. So you would hear this music all over the set, all over the soundstage of Jimmy Stewart, and it was so sweet. That's what he did to relax, while between shots, and It was just great. Henry Fonda, on the other hand, was a complete jerk. And never talked to anybody. In fact, I went up to him afterward, and I knew that his son was, known for smoking dope and stuff like that. And so I said to him, this was we had a break in the show, and I said to him, "Excuse me, can I see for a minute?" And he looked at me, and I said, "Do you have any dope with you?"
You asked Henry Fonda that?
I asked Henry Fonda that. He said, "That's my son."
Oh my God.
Go take a break and smoke a couple of joints,
Oh my God, that's awesome. We'll be back after these messages. Have you ever thought about becoming an actor and making your friends and family jealous? Well, have I got a deal for you. Here at Working Actors School, we offer many different classes so you can become a famous actor like me. And we have a delightful selection of classes, including Adult Weekly. It's every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Here you will learn how to be an actor with other adults. How do we do it? How is it possible? Is it a miracle? Yes, it is. It's a miracle called Zoom. We teach everything online so you can become a famous actor and impress your friends and family. So if you want to be a famous actor and make your friends and family jealous, then you need to sign up at Working Actors School. You can get a hold of us at workingactorschool.com. You can sign up for classes at workingactorschool.com. You can make a reservation for the class online at workingactorschool.com. So come check us out. It's workingactorschool.com. Act 2. Success. Well, so you're doing so you're working all the time, right? And at this time, it's the late 60s, early 70s. I was around at that point, not only in Hollywood, but just on the planet. And this area, Hollywood and LA, had this great vibe. It wasn't San Francisco as far as like all super hippie, but they had hippies here. You were a hippie, right? You were just hanging out, living life. And so you were going around to all these different auditions. Can you tell us what happened and how did you get Little House on the Prairie?
I want to tell you about that because that's one of my favorite things. You know, in those days, I had a clothing store called the Liquid Butterfly. Talk about hippie.
Right.
And I used to make cowboy shirts and tie-dye clothes and peasant dresses. So I was really popular in Hollywood. But I got an interview to go on some show. That wasn't a series I'd ever heard of.
Well, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but let's just stay with Liquid Butterfly for a minute. There's a guy who's in this band called Guns N' Roses, Slash, and his mom is a friend of yours that you used to work together at Liquid Butterfly, right? Did she work there? Saul Hudson was his name.
Yes.
And his mom was like a costumer, wasn't she?
She was
Or like she worked with Bowie and a couple other people.
And his dad, Tony. I knew them very well. Yeah.
So you kind of like, just even before we get to Little House, the Liquid Butterfly is right off of La Cienega, across from a recording studio where not only just the Doors, but a whole lot of other people recorded. So you were kind of in the middle of everything, right?
Well, I was my boyfriend. That's the reason I got the store, the Liquid Butterfly. My boyfriend was the manager for Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Crosby, Stills and Nash. So I was across the hall, literally, from this big, agency. And that's where the Liquid Butterfly was. And it was across from Elektra Records. And that's how I met Jim Morrison. Because I got to work one day and Jim Morrison was standing in my store looking out the window. And he looks at me and he says, "Do you mind if I'm here?"
And you said,
"I don't mind that you're here. Thank you." He said, I just wanted to look at Elektra Records.
Now we again, I refer you to the book, but you and Jim had a very close and fun relationship. From what I read,
we became drinking buddies. And not just the two of us, but 5 or 6 of us at noon would walk down the street on La Cienega Boulevard and go out to lunch and have some drinks and all. And then he basically became my drinking buddy because he didn't want to drink alone, so he would come into the store at 5, 6 o'clock and say, "You want to go?" And I said, "Okay." So we would go. Then he would get so drunk that I would have to drive him home because he trusted me,
Right? Yeah, of course.
I didn't want anything from him. He was my drinking buddy, so I took care of him, and that's how we happened to go on the road together.
And you'll have to read the book for that, but it's a very spicy adventure that you guys went on. I got to also, I'm totally off of my format here just because you're so interesting.
Oh, good.
You mentioned, in passing, your friends, one of which is Joni Mitchell, who is a lifelong friend of yours.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about how you guys met and what your relationship is?
Absolutely. I was living in Laurel Canyon, and Joni moved out from Canada to her manager was one of my friends, moved her into Laurel Canyon, and she didn't drive, she didn't have a car, and she started playing at the Troubadour, which is a relatively small club, And so she needed to.
Which is just up the street. Oh, a special guest appearance by Michael.
Yeah, there's Michael. There's Michael. I could not be so bored. Yeah, right.
And so the Troubadour is just right up the street from Liquid Butterfly as well, right?
Yeah. Well, the Liquid Butterfly was in two different locations. First, it was on La Cienega, upstairs across from Elektra Records. Then we moved to Santa Monica Boulevard, and that's where I had a lot of walk-in traffic there.
Very cool. So you guys met, she was performing, and you would take her to the Troubadour? You would drive her? You're like the Uber to the stars between Morrison.
Yeah, because she didn't know anybody. She was, alone. She lived alone.
There would be no music from the 60s if Charlotte wasn't taking them to the clubs.
Oh, Ladies of the Canyon. Ladies of the Canyon. I was one of those,
Wow. And you have had many of her paintings, right? She's given you a couple
I
paintings.
had one that I just sold recently. If something happened to me and, I've got this big Joni Mitchell painting on my wall, it's going to end up in a garage somewhere.
Right.
So a friend of mine wanted to buy it, so I sold it. And Joni would have approved. It's okay.
No, of course. Look, what I think is so special between you guys is, again, you mentioned it kind of with Jim Morrison. You have this ability where you're not like a ladder climber where you're looking to manipulate people to get something out of them. You're a true blue friend. You're always sweet. You're always willing to help. And these people that come into your life, like a Joni Mitchell or a Jim Morrison or however many, I got lists here. They find a real honest, and I mean that in all the ways. You're always honest, which makes you special in Hollywood. Person that they can rely on.
They trusted me.
Yeah, trustworthiness.
Because I didn't want to use them. I didn't want to, take advantage of them. I was just kind of another person in Hollywood, and they wanted to hang out.
So, okay. Again, there's a great Rolling Stones story that you have to read in her book. It's amazing. It's got so many life moments in one particular night. I could not get over it. I'm pimping out the book. But let's get to Little House. So Little House. So you're running the Liquid Butterfly. What happened? How'd you get on Little House?
I got an agent. My agent. I've been working all this time, as you said, Gunsmoke Medical Center, and I got an interview for Paramount Studios for something called Little House. I didn't pay much attention to it. And I arrived, as I always did, to an interview in my jeans and a tie-dye T-shirt, sort of, and it was the dialogue was very short. I was a teacher, and these two little girls were coming to school for the first time. That's all it was. And I didn't know what it was. So I arrived at Paramount, and there's all these women in Old West dresses, bonnets and long skirts, and I'm in my tie-dye T-shirt and jeans, and they said, "Are you ready to read?" And I went, "Okay." So they opened the door, I walk in, and it's like 12 men in folding chairs, and Michael Landon. I was shocked, speechless, because that's the first time anybody said it was a Michael Landon, thing. And I recovered very quickly.
Well, you did a Bonanza. Did you ever work with Michael before? Or was this the very first moment of seeing him?
3 different episodes of Bonanza. Never worked with Mike. Okay. I never saw him there. But he must have seen me because I'm sure if you're on a series, you watch your own series when it comes on the air. He must have seen me in the different episodes that I did. I don't know.
Before you continue, and again, I know I want to hear the details, but try to explain to people what Michael Landon was like the wattage that he kind of exuded, like just as a human.
Well, he was a star. He was so handsome. And he was very outgoing. He wasn't as snob or anything. He was fun to be around. He would, he laughed a lot, as you know. He laughed a lot. He made things really enjoyable. But I was stunned when I saw him, and my brain's going, holy moly, this is big. It's Michael Landon. So I saw the producer sitting at his big desk, and I said, and he said, "Are you ready to read?" And I said, "May I sit at your desk?" Oh, well, okay. And he got up and moved, and I walked all the way down to the end of the room, and all the men are going, "Oh, what is she?" And I went, "Quiet." I believe I told Michael Landon to shut up on my interview. So I got the part.
What did they do? What did they do? Did they go quiet? Did they shut up?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you do your reading, and then what happens? How do you find out?
Well, in those days we didn't have cell phones, so I had to drive all the way home. I lived in Topanga, which was a long drive. And I got home and my phone rang and my agent said, "You got the part." And I said, "Oh, that's great." And she said, "It's for 4 years."
Wow.
I didn't know it was a series. I thought it was, I don't know what I thought it was.
Right. It hadn't been on the air yet. They had done a pilot, and I think that it had aired, and that was it.
That was it.
So you get this show, and for an actor who is, kind of a gunslinger, you're going around to all these shows, to have a regular gig, was that a big deal for you?
Oh my God. Well, to have a regular income was huge. I had never been on a series before. I had done episodes of shows, but not under contract. So yeah, I was pretty excited. Yep.
So when you get to Little House, the thing in Hollywood is never work with kids and animals. There's nothing but kids, and those are all of your co-stars. Basically, you're obviously Ms. Beadle. You're the one with all the kids. How did you find working with all the children?
First of all, I was totally amazed at how professional they were. I mean, the children that were in my classroom, they knew their lines. They came on time. They didn't act out. I was amazed at how good they were. They weren't just kind of reading their lines and standing there like, some kids do. You look at Laura looking at Miss Beadle.
You fall in love with both of you
because
because
a method actor at 8,
Miss Beadle is the most beautiful woman in the whole world.
You were pretty good too,
Well, I appreciate that, but I think what Michael did for us kids was he hired a kid that he liked, and then that's it.
I heard about how you got your part.
That's a crazy story, but very similar in the sense to you, where it's like I went in and it happened a lot faster, but I didn't know it was a series regular part. I didn't know anything because they apparently were replacing the guy that played my part because the kid wasn't any good. I mean, not as an actor, but just as a person. He was like a bad kid, and Michael said adios, and so they wanted a new kid. And I think that's why on Little House the kids were so good, were because he just hired who he wanted the character to be. Now, when you get into Melissa, that's like a lightning in a bottle. And then with my brother, who could act his way out of, any situation. Yeah. But for the rest of us Prairie kids, it was, similar. But you're a total pro. Catherine McGregor, Richard Bull, Doc Baker, Kevin Hagen, all you guys have been working forever. Dabs Greer. I mean, everybody had a huge history before they hit Little House. Yeah. Did you get a chance to enjoy the process of working on the show? Like, as far as your storylines, did you like the acting you were doing?
Oh yeah. I grew up with my sister had 7 kids, and I grew up in rooms full of a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old. I was used to having that kind of room with children, so it was easy. Plus, they were all professional. These are professional children. They knew their lines. They came on time. They could only work so many hours. So I had the easy part. I never had to stay till midnight. I got to go home when the kids went home. So that was a good thing. But no, I remember there were several times when Laura and Miss Beadle would interact. She was so good. She would look at me with eyes that, she believed that Miss Beadle was the best teacher ever. So the audience believed that Miss Beadle was the best teacher ever,
Well, and as an actor, if you're working with an actor who sucks, you're carrying the whole scene, right? You're trying to give all the reactions that you think this scene deserves. If you're working with a great actor or an actor who's being honest, like Melissa, your acting is being done for you by just reacting to what they're giving you.
Exactly.
And so I can totally, you're a better actor if you're working with a good actor is basically what I'm saying. And so, yeah, I can see that. Who were some of your favorites on the set?
I remember Michael firing one young man on the in the school. He didn't know his lines and he was acting out and all, and Michael took him aside and the kid disappeared.
Yeah, you sent him to the cornfield. We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I've been an actor since I was a little kid, so I know what it's like to be a little kid actor. So I have a class here called Youth Weekly, and that meets every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and it is an awesome class if you are young and want to learn all about acting. We have a great set of kids, and it's taught on Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on your laptop, on an iPad. It's awesome. I've had kids take a class while they were in the car coming back from soccer practice. I swear to you. So if acting is in your blood, come to workingactorschool.com and check out the Youth Weekly class every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you there. Act 3, present day. Well, look, the reality is that Michael, obviously, it was a full-on pro. He was writing, producing, directing, acting, and starring in this show, and he didn't have time for anybody that wasn't there to honestly do their job. And he also had a lot of great people. I never got a chance to work with Victor French because my character is the replacement for when Victor went to do Carter Country. And so they brought Merlin in to give Michael a big bearded guy to like Mutt and Jeff with. But originally, obviously, and then later, it was Victor French. Now, again, read the book. But Victor, I never got a chance to work with him as an actor or a director. Can you talk to me about like what Victor was like to work with as an actor or a director?
Oh, my God. Well, I didn't have a lot of acting scenes with Victor, but he was a director as well. And when he directed, he had it all planned out. You didn't have to figure things out. We didn't waste a lot of time on Little House, planning things. They were done, they were set, you did your lines, and it's a wrap. But Victor was such a good director. He had such empathy, and he played bad guys for so long, and then he suddenly is Mr. Edwards, who is this kind of goof.
Right.
A goofy guy. And it was perfect. It was just perfect because it's very sympathetic and, loving. I adored him. And we became friends with benefits, if you know what that means.
He was a very sympathetic person. I like that. Okay. Well, okay. So I didn't know this until I read your book, again, which you all should read. But during this period of time, you were also doing Eraserhead, which I didn't know. I love the movie Eraserhead, but I always thought that it was when you're doing a small budget, weird movie like Eraserhead, my experience is they always happen quickly. Eraserhead took like 7 years to make or something?
Yeah, I only worked on it a couple of years. Most of that time was spent editing. David Lynch editing the show together, the movie. But I did overlap kind of a couple of times. I overlapped once with the Waltons, which was very interesting. I had worked, sometimes David only liked to work at night. David Lynch was a night shooter. And so I was working all night long on Eraserhead and then showed up at 6 a.m. at Paramount to work on the Waltons or Warner Brothers, I don't know where I was. And I was a blithering idiot and could hardly tell where I was. But sometimes you had to overlap those. When you do a student film, it's usually for free and it's usually at night because they don't want to interfere with any other real work that you can get. So
Right.
it took a long time. But
Can
I
you
have to
give us a slight little? I mean, we just lost him, but the guy was super talented, but also extremely weird. So, what was he like in real life?
Well, I never thought he was weird. He was just very dedicated. I'll tell you, when I met him, my roommate was volunteering at the American Film Institute, and she came home and she said, "I'm working with this student director. He's doing a film. He needs an actress to play a part." And so I've invited him for dinner. So David came to dinner with his wife at the time, and he's wearing a Panama hat, 3 neckties, suit, coat, 3 neckties. I asked him about that. He said, "Oh, well, I always wear my lucky tie, and then I always wear a tie, like most men do. And then I had a special tie because I was coming to dinner to meet you." So that's
It's
how I
such a
met
perfect
Lynch.
David Lynchism. Absolutely. So, not on the same day, but within the same realm, you're working with Michael Landon, director, who is like the guy that knows every lens, everything about production, has been doing it for 20 years. And then you're also working with David Lynch, who is a student at this time.
Mm-hmm.
How is it to go between those two worlds as an actor and working with that dichotomy of a director?
Well, I'll give you an example. To do Little House on the Prairie, which is usually about an hour long, and to do Eraserhead, which was a little over an hour long. Eraserhead took 4 years, and Michael Landon took like 5 days. Did I give you an idea?
So usually directors will tell you, they'll talk to you about the emotions of what the characters are feeling and talk about intention and the spine of the scene or what's happening in the scene before. But in your book, I heard that David would give you pictures or talk about animals that would let you find the emotion. Is that right?
I don't know what that refers to, and I'm sure I did it. I wrote something about it, but
You were just explaining that he would show you paintings and stuff about how he was feeling about what this was like. Because Eraserhead, if you haven't seen it, Eraserhead is really, really weird.
I
I mean, it's
remember.
very impressionistic.
But I remember one where there's a scene where Mary is in Eraserhead, where Mary is leaving Henry, and she reaches under the bed to get her suitcase, and he said, "I want you to pull on it until I tell you to bring it out. Pull and pull." So I did, and I think I pulled 12 times or something. I'm pulling, and I'm getting angry, and I'm pulling, and I'm pulling, and he finally goes, "Okay, I get the suitcase. And I say to Henry, "And you better take care of him." Oh,
Let's talk just briefly about Jack Nance, because now Jack is one of your most longest relationship with a buddy out here. You've known him since Eraserhead. So we sadly lost Jack, but you guys had this crazy, again, see the book, you've had this crazy up and down relationship where you've kind of been with each other in each other's lives, platonically, but in each other's lives at highs and lows. What was that like to have a friend like that?
Well, Jack was a very unique person. He didn't talk much at all. In fact, that was one of the things that was strange about him is while we were doing Eraserhead, and it took a long time, he would just sit in a chair and not talk. When I got to know him better, after Eraserhead, he was having a very, very hard time. And I was on Little House on the Prairie. I was doing great. So we ended up rooming together. I invited him to come live with me, not as a couple, just as friends. And then after Little House, then we did Twin Peaks together with David Lynch. And we became very good friends. We were connected for so long. And then he had a pretty bad drinking problem, and it ended up taking his life, really.
Right.
So, but we had a lot of fun together,
Well, I mean, not only that, but you had a lot of sobriety together, you had a lot of fun together, and you had a friendship that it's really beautiful when you read it in the book of the support that you kind of give each other, and in his own way, the support that, the way that you guys interacted, I was really, really impressed with. So let's get to Twin Peaks, because Twin Peaks is a culmination. It takes you 4 years to do playing Mary X, and takes you 4 years to do the movie. And then Twin Peaks happens, and it's Jack, and David Lynch again.
David Lynch called me up, and here's what he said. Shar, you want to go to work? Yeah.
What a classy guy. What was that experience like? Because it was a huge out of nowhere phenomenon.
Oh, we got so put down by Hollywood. Oh my God. People are going, that will never go anywhere. Oh, it is too strange. It was, and then people going, did you see it last night?
I was one of those people. I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, it was just everyone was wondering what was going to go on.
Yep.
So when you were doing the show like that, was it in the book you talk about the beginning, like, because I feel this way too, kind of like a summer camp. You guys were all kind of banding together to make a project. And then as it became more and more successful and popular, in the sense that the network started paying more attention to it, then you started they were only giving you the scenes that you were in and not the whole scripts. And
well, that was one of the things. They didn't want the cast to know too much about what was happening in the story, so they wouldn't let us know. We would get together on a Monday night at 8:00 or 9:00, whatever, and watch Twin Peaks, because we didn't know what was going to happen to our own characters. We had no idea.
Gosh.
In fact, in the episode where Agent Cooper gets shot,
yeah,
we thought we were out of work. We all looked at each other like, is it over?
It's not past David to end a show like that, just like doing it like that. Yeah, absolutely.
And he said if the network hadn't picked it up, that was the end of the show, was the lead character gets shot. Boop.
What was it like because you came back for the reboot or the return? What was that like?
It was great. It was David Lynch,
So, okay, before we leave this area, because it's been, obviously people love Little House. Do you have a favorite Little House episode you were in?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, gosh. I think, and it wasn't a very big one, but it's where Miss Beadle gets fired. Mrs. Olson walks in the schoolroom while Miss Beadle is trying to keep two farm kids from killing each other, and so Pa comes to Miss Beadle's room and says, they've let you go. And Victor French directed that.
Right.
And so Pa's standing in the doorway, and I'm looking out the window, and Victor said, don't let them see you're upset. So I had to suck it in and accept it, Victor saw that.
That is such a great direction, because what it does for the actor is it adds a layer of, as soon as you can't emote, then it just bubbles up out of nowhere. It's hard to keep it down.
But I got hired back.
There you go. Yeah, good.
They
Little House,
replaced me with a real jerk.
Okay, cool. Well, one last question for Little House, and I'm not going to let you squirrel out of this. Who was your favorite person to work with on Little House on the Prairie, period?
Melissa Gilbert.
It's a great answer.
How old was she when she started? Was she like 8, 9?
Something like that. I mean, she was literally like just a baby.
She was so good. She was so believable. She was so, I don't even have the words for it. I was so impressed with her.
That's sweet. I mean, it's true. And it's like to this day, I tell this story, I'm always amazed. Melissa has this uncanny ability to be very empathetic about how other people are feeling. And when she goes to these conventions that we go to, her line is always a bunch of women crying because it's so important to them that they're meeting Laura and she hugs and counsels all of them, and it's like a huge. It's like she's running a therapy session for 1,000 women. We'll be back after these messages. Hey, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I know what it's like if you are in a class with people, and sometimes you just want to have that one-on-one connection with the person that you're working with to go over, I don't know, a particular scene, or maybe you have an audition, or maybe you just want the privacy to try stuff that you don't really know is going to work and not have anyone look at you. Well, I have the perfect solution for you. It's called One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can book your time at workingactorschool.com, and it's just me and you for an hour going over whatever it is you want to work on, breaking down the script, talking about character, figuring out your intention, the spine of the scene, everything that goes in to making a dynamite performance. So if you're interested in acting and want that one-on-one personal attention, check out One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can find all the information you need at workingactorschool.com. Act 4, questions. Okay, so we're into the questions now, sweetie. Here are the questions. I'm going to ask you these questions. I ask everybody these questions. My wife, Tina, came up with these questions, so Tina's got to know. And the first question is called, Show Me the Money. What is your biggest missed financial opportunity?
Probably asking for more money.
Good answer.
Especially for Little House on the Prairie, I was so grateful that somebody hired me for 4 years that I never even questioned the money. And I look back on it and I wasn't making that much, but I didn't question it at all.
From what I hear though, nobody was making any money on Little House on the Prairie except Michael. And that's the way it should be, I guess. It's his show. Okay, showdown. What is the best thing you've ever done? And then the worst thing you've ever done professionally, like in your acting? Like, what do you think you're most proud of and least proud of?
Boy, well, I am extremely proud of being Miss Beadle, and that people still recognize me as Miss Beadle because it's been 50 years. And I meet people who couldn't have been alive for that long. And I'm just so grateful that there's a process. When we first did Little House on the Prairie, there were no reruns. They had to wait until the next season to actually run. Now you can bring up things anytime you want, Yeah. So we didn't have that chance. So I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for that. That people who weren't even born when I was doing the show had come and say, "You were Miss Beadle."
And then what would be the worst project that you've ever been involved in that you just do not want anyone to know about except everyone listening?
Oh God. I'm terrible at this because I'm one of the most grateful actors you'll ever meet. Every job I got, I was so grateful for. It's like I can't even believe that I acted as long as I did. And the only reason that I am not acting anymore is that I couldn't remember my lines. And I decided I was not going to do that to another actor or to a director to hire me to do something and have to go retake. So
it's very difficult. I ended up working with a guy who had a thing in his ear and he had his dialogue being told to him because of that. And it was like, it stopped working. And then it was embarrassing. It was a horrible situation. So good call on your part.
Yeah, I didn't want to be that selfish.
Okay, well, here's another one. Here's another question. No show. What part did you want but didn't get?
I don't remember.
Okay, good. You live a happy life. Look, these are
them all, Patrick.
You want them? You got them all. Good, exactly. I'm going to end with this one, and I think you have an answer to this.
Okay.
It's called Show Me Some Love. What is your favorite performance of mine?
Anything I saw in Little House on the Prairie. And then I did tune in. You were on that Army show, the military show.
Right.
Wait, what was that called?
It was called Jag.
Jag.
Epilogue. Well, sweetheart, you've nailed a great career. Again, please, everyone, read her book. It's amazing. It is called Little House in the Hollywood Hills, A Bad Girl's Guide to Becoming Miss Beadle, Mary X, and Me.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to promote or anything coming up, or your Beadle bags or anything else you want to talk about? Maybe Michael's gems, or I don't know what, anything?
Well, what I do spend my days doing now in retirement is I sew every day. And I've come up with something called a Beadle bag, which is a tote bag with pictures from Little House on the Prairie on it. And I make them all myself. That's what I was doing this morning.
They're beautiful. You do your craftsmanship is really good.
Thank you.
Well, sweetie, thank you so much for doing this. I adore you. I think you're one of the funniest people, and it's just and you were so good on the show.
Thanks.
And I loved. We didn't even talk about Tremors, which is another another great movie that is just a whole bunch of fun. So we'll have to have you back. But until then, thank you so much. I love you, and thank you so much for doing this.
God bless you. I love you too.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad that you're enjoying the podcast and checking it out. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your audio podcast, and it's a video podcast over on YouTube. My socials are all patrick.labyorteaux, and that is on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. I'm everywhere. If you want information on the school, you can go to workingactorsschool.com. We have classes going all the time. It's a lot of fun. I suggest you check it out. Hey, we'll see you next time.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.